I'm Avery, 35 years old, an interior architect specializing in restoring historic homes in Charleston, South Carolina. My name was on the cover of last October's Modern Design Monthly, along with a two-page feature about the restoration of the Harrison River estate, but not a single person in my family called to congratulate me. They didn't even know. To them, I was just the eldest daughter who still hasn't settled down, while my sister Brielle was the real pro. I once thought things would change when I got pregnant. Even though I wasn't pampered like Brielle, I hoped the baby would be a bridge, but that hope vanished 6 months ago. Along with the fragile heartbeat I used to listen to every morning in the ultrasound room, the miscarriage felt like falling into a pit. I could barely get out of bed for 3 weeks. Every time I woke up, the white crib I'd ordered from Italy still sat in the middle of the bedroom like a cruel reminder I never got to touch my child before saying goodbye. And yet, on the third day after I was discharged from the hospital, my mother called, her voice casual. "Have you cleared the room yet? Don't let the gloom linger too long. It's not good." It was speechless, only replying, "Yes, I know." She didn't ask how much it hurt. She didn't ask what I needed. She just warned me not to let Brielle see me upset because it might affect the baby's mental health. I have a husband, his name is Logan, the only one who never left my side through it all. He sat by my bed for hours, quietly reading, cooking porridge, wiping away the tears. I tried to hide under my pillow. Logan's Aunt Clara, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, also called me every night. She never asked, "Are you okay?" She simply said, "Don't force a smile around people who don't deserve it. If you need to cry, cry, and if you need to scream, then scream." Those simple words saved me. My family has never been a warm place. My mom always said I was too ambitious, and my dad considered every one of my accomplishments superficial when Brielle got accepted to a nearby community college. The whole family celebrated with a grand dinner. When I won a full scholarship to study architecture in New York, all they said was, "Why go so far and make life harder?" I got used to their indifference, but I never thought they could still be so cold even when I lost a life I had carried. This week, I received an invitation from Brielle, the sister who's treated like royalty, announcing a party to celebrate her pregnancy. Attached was a handwritten note from my mom. "Avery, are you free Saturday night? You're her sister after all. Help out with the decorations, will you? You've always had good taste." I read it over and over, my heart frozen. Not a single word acknowledged that I had once been pregnant. Not one question about whether I was okay to attend. Just a simple demand: help out, you owe the family. Logan looked at me as I folded the card. "You don't have to go," he said gently, but firmly. I smiled, strained. "They're my family. If I don't go, they'll call me selfish," Logan said. Nothing, but his eyes were heavy with pain. He knew I'd been clinging to a concept of family that had rotted from within. That night, I sat by the window looking out at the misty garden, holding an unfinished sketch, the design for a baby's room I'd once drawn for myself. But now I was revising it for Brielle. I painted flowers on the wall and shaded over the ache in my chest, and I wondered when would I be seen as a person, not just a shadow in my own family. I arrived at my parents' house Saturday afternoon, arms full of lavender-themed decorations. Brielle had requested by text. The familiar two-story white house appeared through the oak trees, still as peaceful as the last time I was there, the day I announced my pregnancy and received a blank stare from my mother instead of congratulations. When I stepped inside, the atmosphere buzzed with forced cheer. Brielle sat in the center of the living room, her barely showing belly already cradled like treasure by our mother. She laughed as Dad brought out a cake decorated with an ultrasound image. "Does the baby look like me, sis?" Brielle turned to me, her voice bright. I smiled and nodded gently. "Avery's here," my mom announced, like I was a supporting character arriving on cue. "Did you bring the stuff? I've set up the tables in the garden. Help decorate, will you?" Brielle shouldn't be moving around too much, yes. I replied quietly and walked to the kitchen, laying out all the ribbons, lights, and paper flowers. Logan started to follow, but I shook my head. "I'm okay," I whispered. He understood and stepped out onto the back porch, looking out over the trimmed hedge. As I strung lights onto a tree branch, I heard my mom from inside. "Avery's good at this sort of thing. Right, Brielle? It's lucky you've got such a capable sister. Takes the worry off your shoulders." I arranged a bunch of lavender in a glass vase, my fingers gripping so tightly they turned pale. The party started at 4. Relatives and friends arrived in waves, everyone all smiles, complimenting Brielle's glow and my parents' good fortune. I stayed near the dessert table, plating pastries and smiling politely. No one mentioned my pregnancy. No one asked if I was tired from handling the entire decoration setup alone. Aside from Brielle, the only person in my family who ever made me feel truly seen was Ethan, Brielle's husband. He was a medical resident 4 years older than her, quiet but perceptive. As I tied the final ribbon to the main chair, he approached and softly asked, "Avery, are you really okay?" Startled, I looked up. Ethan's eyes weren't pretending. They weren't pitying, just genuine. I nodded slightly. "I'm okay. Thank you." He looked like he wanted to say more, but Brielle called out from across the yard. "Ethan, come, take pictures." He gave me one last glance before turning away. At twilight, as the party wrapped up, Brielle walked over, sweet as sugar. "You're amazing, sis. I don't know how today would have turned out without you." I was about to respond when my mother chimed in, patting my shoulder. That's what sisters are for. Thoughtful, selfless, I looked at her, feeling for the first time that the distance between us was wider than an ocean. After most guests had left, I headed to the backyard to clean up the lights and flowers. The air had turned chilly, and a breeze slipped through my sleeves, making me shiver. Logan placed his jacket over my shoulders. "Ready to go. Give me a minute. I just need a moment." I stood beneath the tree, watching the little bulbs dim like fading illusions. I wasn't sure what I was still holding on to. Recognition, a hug, maybe just a simple apology. That night after we got home, I received a message from Brielle. "Thanks for today." Oh, and next week's the gender reveal ultrasound. Come if you're free. You probably know all about that stuff already. I didn't reply. I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, full of questions no one ever answers. Why does every blame fall on me? Why is my pain never worth listening to? I don't know what lies ahead, but that night for the first time, I thought, if blood ties can shatter you, maybe it's time I find myself. Not for them, for me. The gender reveal party was held on a mild Sunday afternoon at a rented countryside villa outside Fairview. The house had a wide porch and a backyard that stretched toward the edge of a pine forest. Brielle wanted everything to feel cozy, intimate, yet elegant, and of course, my mother decided Avery was the best person to bring that vision to life. I almost declined, but Logan encouraged me to go one last time to close the chapter. With nothing left owed in love or duty, I arrived earlier than the others to finish setting up. Under the porch hung pastel pink and blue balloons, and in the center of the yard sat a large table draped in white linen topped with a sealed box. The one Brielle said would reveal the baby's gender in the most surprising way. Around 3 guests began to arrive. Family members, Brielle's friends, Dad's colleagues, even some faces I didn't recognize. Everyone chatted cheerfully. I made sure not to linger too long in one spot, afraid someone might catch a flicker of my real emotions. Logan and Aunt Clara were there too, though Clara didn't hide her tension when she saw my mother. Brielle stepped out the front door in a white lace maternity dress, holding Ethan's hand. She held a microphone in the other. "Thank you all for coming," Brielle beamed. "Today is such a special day for our family, not just because we're finding out the baby's gender, but because it's a chance to celebrate those who've always been there for us." I was placing more glasses of juice on the table when her voice rang louder through the microphone. "And most of all today, I want to thank the person who helped organize this whole party despite everything, my dear sister Avery." Scattered claps echoed around. I gave a small nod and forced a smile. Then Brielle grinned, a slight crooked smile like she was preparing for some bizarre performance. "Oh, and one more special thing. You know why Avery had so much time to help me?" She paused deliberately. "It's because she's not busy with a baby anymore." The room fell silent because she lost the pregnancy. Brielle laughed out loud as if telling a joke. "So I guess today's kind of a party to welcome her back to single life and work, huh?" I froze in place, my breath caught in my throat. Logan jumped to his feet, but I held up a hand to stop him. People looked around confused. Some let out awkward laughs. Others turned away. Ethan stood motionless, like he couldn't believe what his wife had just said. I walked toward the stage, my voice low but firm. "What did you just say, Brielle?" She blinked. "Oh my gosh, don't be so tense. You're always so sensitive. I was just joking." "Everyone knows, right?" "Joking," I whispered. "You use someone's loss as a punchline, Brielle." "Don't you see how wrong that is?" Before she could respond, my mother rushed over, grabbed my arm, and yanked hard. "Avery, you're making a scene. Bring up Mom." I barely got a word out before she gripped my arm tighter. "Can't you just hold it in? You turn everything into a tragedy. I just want to be treated with respect, Mom." She growled, pulling me toward the upstairs balcony away from the guests. "If you don't want to shame this family, you'll shut up and get back out there." I pulled my arm free, my eyes blazing. "You've never cared how I felt, to you only. Brielle matters. I lost a child and you never even hugged me once." Her face flushed. You always play the victim. That's why no one loves you. I stepped back. If that's what you think, then suddenly she shoved me hard on the shoulder. Then get out. If you can't act with dignity for this family, I stumbled, my foot slipping. My back slammed into the wooden railing, then everything tilted. I heard Logan shouting somewhere behind me, Aunt Clara screaming, and then just wind roaring past my ears and the endless blue sky above. I was falling, and in that moment I wondered had my mother finally seen me, even if only to push me away. I woke up in a stark white room at Oakview Medical Center in downtown Charleston. The sting of antiseptic hit my nose and made me dizzy. My throat burned, and every breath felt like a stone on my chest. My left arm was in a cast, and my back ached fiercely. I tried to lift my head. Logan was sitting beside me, eyes red, gripping my hand like he might lose me again. "Avery," his voice trembled. "You're alive," the doctor said. "You fractured some ribs, a lower spinal injury, and a mild concussion, but you'll recover." I opened my mouth, but no sound came. A single tear slipped down my cheek. I was still alive. After falling from the second floor, I was still here. Logan brought a glass of water to my lips, helping me sip. Then he took a deep breath, like preparing to say something important. "Avery, someone wants to see you, but only if you're ready." "Oh," I whispered. Logan glanced at the door. "Ethan, he's already spoken to the police. There's something you need to know." Ethan entered with a hollow look on his face. He wasn't the calm man I'd seen at the party. Something in his eyes had shifted. A torment, a reckoning, Avery. "I'm sorry for everything," I stayed quiet. Ethan sat down beside the bed, staring at his trembling hands. "I've stayed silent for too long, but after what happened, I can't anymore." I held my breath, a wave of fear and desperate need to know swelling inside me. "It wasn't an accident," he said, his voice raw. "I had my doubts since your miscarriage, but I didn't want to believe it until I overheard Brielle and your mom whispering in the kitchen those days you visited. Every time you had tea, I saw them switching the packet. I asked, and Brielle said it was some herbal blend to help you relax. I closed my eyes tight. The nausea, the dizziness, the racing heart, I blamed it all on stress. Ethan pulled out a stack of papers from his coat pocket. I kept a few of the tea bags. I had them tested at the clinic where I work. They found alkaloids that interfere with fetal development. I went numb. It wasn't an accident. They had done it on purpose. And that's not all, Ethan continued. I pulled old texts from Brielle's phone. "She messaged your mom, 3 more days of this and it'll be done. Don't worry, she's too weak." Logan gripped the chair so hard his knuckles went white. "We turned everything over to the police," he said. "The prescription your mom filled under a fake name, security footage from the old kitchen," Ethan's statement. "They're building a case." I shook my head as tears streamed down my face, not from the physical pain, but from betrayal. Ethan bowed his head. "I stayed quiet too long. Avery for family out of fear, but I can't let you carry this alone anymore." I looked at him and gave a slight nod. My heart may have been in pieces, but one thing was clear, the truth was finally out. A little later, a woman in business attire entered the room. She had short curly hair, eyes sharp yet kind, Avery. "I am Danielle Blake. I'll be representing you in this case." I nodded slowly. Beside me, Logan squeezed my hand and whispered, "From now on, we won't let anyone hurt you again." I turned to look at him silently, grateful, because even if blood could push me off a ledge, it was a stranger who reached out and pulled me back, and this time I wouldn't let go. 2 days later, I was moved to a private hospital room with a window that overlooked a small park. Autumn sunlight streamed through sheer white curtains, casting soft shadows on the tile floor. Everything around me was calm, but the storm inside hadn't settled. Attorney Danielle Blake returned, holding a stack of files. She sat beside my bed and opened them with a composed expression, though I could see the careful weight in her eyes. "Avery," she began, "there's something I need to share with you. It's difficult to hear, but I believe you have a right to know." I nodded, bracing myself. "The police have taken preliminary statements from your mother, from medicine, and from a few other relatives. There are things that sound unbelievable, but much of the evidence aligns with Ethan's testimony." I clutched the blanket tighter. "Tell me I can take it." Clarissa exhaled, her voice dropping lower. "Your mother, Margot, stated that ever since you and your sister were young, she was told something by your grandfather, Edmund Carter. Something she called a family tradition, that the first grandchild born in the next generation must carry the Wellington name in order to inherit the farmland trust valued at nearly $1 million. My eyes widened. What your grandfather passed away 5 years ago, but he left behind an addendum to his will to be opened only when his first great-grandchild was born. The condition was clear: inheritance would only be granted if the child had the Wellington surname and was raised by a family member with that name. I went still. Clarissa continued, Brielle changed her last name to Foster after marrying Ethan, but Margot insisted that Brielle's child would have the name legally changed to qualify. And more than that, she believed Brielle, the deserving daughter, should be the one to have the first child. If you gave birth, things would get complicated, I murmured. So they... Clarissa nodded slightly. They didn't want you to become a mother first. They feared losing the inheritance. To them, your baby was an obstacle. My throat tightened. I used to believe that even if my mother didn't love me like she loved Brielle, she was still my mother. But now I realize I was just a threat to their plan. They chose to erase a life to protect their gain. There's more. Clarissa said gently, placing a stack of printed messages on the table. These conversations were recovered from Brielle's phone. Some of them are hard to read. I looked down at the words. What does Avery have? Her name's not even in the will. Her kid wouldn't be a Wellington either. That baby was never supposed to exist. Another line. Don't worry, Mom. I switched the tea. 3 more days and it'll be done. Then Avery will be left with nothing but an empty belly and pity, I gasped, my heart pounding. Clarissa placed a hand on my shoulder. Avery, they weren't just cruel, they manipulated both the law and morality to get what they wanted. But we have proof, and this time they won't get away with it. I stayed quiet for a long time before whispering, does he know about the inheritance? No, Clarissa replied. He was kept completely in the dark, but when he found out, he was devastated. He's working with his own lawyer to file for divorce. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the heat of fresh tears. Brielle, my sister, the girl who once shared my childhood bedroom, whispering stories under the blankets. The one who used to call me the best sister in the world. Now, she was the one who sank me. Clarissa stood up. I'll return later with the investigator and the civil complaint documents. You need rest. First. She left. Logan came into the room. He sat beside me and handed me a glass of orange juice. I looked at him, my eyes brimming. I used to think I was just the leftover in the family. Now I know I never really had a family at all. Logan held my hand, steady. You will not from blood, but from the people who choose to love you, protect you, and never let you go. I nodded slightly, and in that moment, amidst the wound still healing, I knew I would rise again. That winter, the trial began at Savannah County Court. The courtroom, with its high wooden ceilings and cold fluorescent lights, couldn't shake the chill inside my chest every time I looked across at them. My mother, my father, and Brielle sitting on the other side of the defense table. The people I once called family, I sat beside. Attorney Clarissa and Logan. Behind me were Aunt Clara and a few supportive colleagues. Ethan sat alone in the back, solemn and reflective. He had filed for divorce just a week after learning the full truth. The prosecutor presented all the evidence. Audio recordings, text messages, prescription receipts, statements from the clinic, and surveillance footage from the old house. Each piece felt like a blade carving through my chest. Not because it hurt more, but because I had to face the truth I once tried so hard to deny. At first, Brielle denied everything. She claimed she was just following Mom's lead, that she didn't know the tea was harmful, that it was all a misunderstanding between sisters. But when the prosecutor read aloud the message, don't worry, 3 more days and she's done. She's so weak. Brielle broke down, collapsed, and never said another word. My mother, Margot, held on to her pride until the end. She told the judge directly, we did it for the family's interest, for tradition. Avery was never truly part of this lineage. My father, Gerald, remained silent. When questioned, all he could repeat was, I was just doing what my wife wanted. When it was my turn to testify, the room fell silent. I told everything start to finish, without pause or embellishment. I looked each of them in the eyes and said, I don't need your pity, I need justice. And the child I lost deserves to be acknowledged as part of the truth. Weeks later, the verdict was announced. Brielle was sentenced to 4 years in prison for intentionally harming a pregnant woman and conspiracy to interfere with reproductive health. My mother and father each received 5 years for conspiracy, familial abuse, and concealing a criminal act. Their mansion in Willow Creek was sealed for asset investigation. The Carter Family Trust, the very thing they tried to protect at all costs, was placed under temporary state control as no legal heir remained who met the original conditions. Brielle gave birth in prison in March, a healthy baby boy named Noah. The child was placed under state protection and temporarily cared for by a carefully screened foster family. Ethan visited me one afternoon in April, just as the early spring breeze softened. He held a file in his hand, his eyes somber but resolute. I've been granted custody of Noah, he said, and I have changed his last name to Foster. I know that doesn't undo everything, but at least the boy won't carry the weight of someone else's guilt. I looked at him, my heart tightening. I hope I grows up surrounded by love and kindness. And Ethan, you did the right thing. I used to think I was just a bystander, he said quietly. But the truth is, you were the only one who saw it all clearly from the beginning. But before leaving, he turned back. If someday Noah wants to know about the person who stood up for what was right, I'll tell him about you. Not as a victim, but as the strongest person I've ever known. I stood on my porch watching Ethan and the sleeping child in the stroller fade into the distance. I had once lost everything fall into pieces, but now I knew justice isn't just about verdicts. It's when truth is brought to light, and those who were hurt are finally called by their true name. Survivor, someone worthy of love, someone who no longer bows their head. The summer after the final court hearing with the name Wellington, no longer haunting my every dream, Logan and I moved to a small coastal town called Seabrook Bay. Our new home sat just minutes from the ocean, with neat rows of lavender in the garden designed by Logan himself, and a sunlit studio where I slowly began sketching again after months of letting it all go. My spine had nearly healed, though the ache still flared when the weather shifted, a quiet reminder that some wounds don't vanish, you just learn to live with them. But strangely, I no longer feared that pain. It had become part of me, like a beautiful scar proof that I had survived. I didn't reach out to my mother, father, or Brielle again. No calls, no handwritten letters, not a single apology from any of them, and I no longer needed one. The silence between us, cold yet liberating, was the final period I needed to begin a new chapter. One early fall afternoon, Aunt Clara came to visit, bringing with her a young guest. The girl's name was Sophie. 10 years old, long brown hair, gray-blue eyes, and a gaze that seemed to carry a whole sky of loneliness. He's the daughter of an old friend, Aunt Clara said. Her mother died in a car accident 3 months ago, and her father is missing. She's currently under temporary care at a state shelter, but they say she's quiet and distant. When I mentioned you, she said she wanted to meet. I knelt down to meet Sophie's eyes. Do you want to draw? I offered her my sketchbook. Her eyes lit up. I like drawing houses with really big windows, she whispered, so when I'm sad, I can still see the sky. For some reason, her words caught in my throat. I handed her a box of colored pencils. That whole afternoon, we sat side by side without saying much. Sophie drew. I watched, and something magical happened. This house, once haunted by shadows of the past, began to feel alive again with the sound of a child's quiet joy drifting through the windows. That night, as Logan and I cleared the dinner table, he looked at me and asked, "What would you think if we tried to adopt Sophie?" I went still. Not from surprise, but because my heart suddenly clenched in the warmest way. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Are you?" Logan replied, taking my hand. "From the moment you started drawing again, from the moment Sophie stepped into this house, I knew we were ready." 3 months later, with Clarissa's legal help, we completed the paperwork to become Sophie's temporary guardians under special protective care. Logan and I never promised to be perfect parents. We only promised never to abandon her, never to make love, something she had to earn. One Sunday morning, Sophie sat in my studio coloring a picture she'd drawn. In it, 3 people stood in front of a wooden house, a long-haired woman, a tall man, and a little girl holding a yellow umbrella. "Lai, who are you drawing?" I asked gently. "My new family," she said, then paused. "Do you think Mama Avery will like this picture?" I couldn't hold back the tears. I walked over and hugged her tightly, and for the first time since losing my baby, my heart felt whole family. To me, it no longer meant bloodlines or some prestigious last name etched in stone. Family was the hand that steadied me when I fell. It was the trust in a child's eyes, the kind that had once known hurt but dared to open up again. Billy, this little girl, didn't replace anyone, but she taught me that loss doesn't mean the end. It's the space where something new can grow, and this time I would nurture it with love, without conditions, without fear. In the gentle light of morning, I knew I had found the most precious thing a lifetime could offer, a real family. On an early October morning with dew still clinging to the lavender outside our porch, I woke to the sound of little footsteps padding through the house. Sophie was searching for the sketchbook she'd left behind the night before. She was flipping pillows on the chair, muttering, "It has to be here." I sat up, smiling. "I saw it on the kitchen counter. You forgot to bring it upstairs after drawing." Sophie peeked out from behind the curtain, her eyes lighting up. "Thank goodness, I thought it disappeared like my cookies last night." Logan called up from downstairs. The cookies disappeared into Daddy's stomach, gnawed into thin air, but the sketchbook's safe. Laughter filled the house, a simple morning, an ordinary moment, but for me it was a miracle. There was a time I believed I'd never have peace like this again. I had once been betrayed by my own family. In the cruelest way, I had fallen from a second floor balcony, pushed by my own mother in front of a crowd. I had lost a child I never got to hold. But today I stood here not as a broken woman, but as a mother, a wife, and a survivor who had grown. We officially adopted Sophie the following spring. The court hearing was brief, and no tears were shed out of pain, only joy. When the judge banged the gavel and granted us permanent custody, Sophie threw her arms around me and Logan and whispered, "Can I really call you mom and dad now?" I nodded, my voice nearly breaking. "From now on, you're our daughter in every way." We threw a small party in the backyard to celebrate Sophie officially becoming part of our family. No extravagant decorations, no fancy restaurants, just a few paper lanterns, a homemade chocolate cake baked by Logan, and our first family photo taken beneath the oak tree in our front yard. That evening, while I was washing dishes in the kitchen, Sophie came up behind me and hugged me tight, Mama. "Avery," I turned around. "Yes, sweetheart, is real family when you get to be yourself and not pretend to be someone else." I knelt down and looked into her gray-blue eyes, eyes that once held nothing but mistrust. "Exactly. Family is where you're loved for being you." She nodded and whispered, "I think I found my family." Her words floated as softly as the wind, but in my heart they rang like a bell of rebirth. I had spent so long searching for what family meant, through pain, through shattered dreams. But now I understood family isn't bound by blood. It's not a place where you must mold yourself to be accepted. Real family sees every part of you, strong or fragile, and chooses to love you anyway. I once believed that without the baby I lost, I could never be a mother, but then I met Sophie, a child who had lost everything too, and together we healed. I once thought that after being pushed by my own mother, I would never trust anyone again. But Logan stood beside me, never asking for anything, just waiting patiently as I learned to rise. And now, when I look at my little family gathered at the dinner table each night, I no longer feel regret. I feel only gratitude, attitude, that the fall that could have ended my life opened the door to a new chapter, one filled with light and truth from what seemed like the end. Avery rebuilt a new life founded not on blood, but on love and kindness. She discovered that real family isn't defined by genetics, but by those who choose to stand by you every day. Avery's journey is proof that even from the deepest hurt, we can emerge into the light, stronger, freer, and full of hope for the future we truly deserve. What do you think about Avery's journey? Does family have to mean blood? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about life and family.